the August 22nd webinar, not the August 12th. I didn't change that date there, so sorry about that, but it's the August the 22nd webinar. And for this webinar today, I'm planning on going through crops update, going through several different things that have been starting to show up this past week, maybe last couple weeks, I guess. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about Aster's yellow. We've been seeing more and more of it showing up, or getting reports of it being in other crops. So I just wanted to maybe touch base on it again, just to I guess give you a little bit more information, and I guess it's something this year that we definitely are seeing a lot of. So with that, I guess we'll get going. And I guess one of the first ones I want to talk about is something that we're seeing a fair bit in the southwest here this year, and it's been affecting our wheat yields. And it's common root rot, and it's been showing up pretty much in every field. It seems like it's sporadic throughout the field. It's not one location here or there. It's basically everywhere you look. And when you grab those heads, those whitish type heads, there's usually nothing or very little seed in those heads. And when you pull on those plants, they come right out of the ground and pull out of the ground, and there's very little or root development on those plants. And when you first go out and look at some of these fields, the potential for really good yields is there. But then when when producers get harvesting the fields, we are seeing pretty much average to maybe just slightly above average yields. But a lot of these heads are empty, and has had an impact on the yields. Quality-wise, not really, because there's nothing in those heads, and they're basically just going right through the combine. While we're on wheat, maybe just talk a little bit more about a few of the other things we've been seeing in the wheat crop. We've been seeing fusarium starting to show up now in some of the later fields, and which is probably something we were expecting. We had good conditions for fusarium, and the later crops are starting to come in now, and you could see where the fusarium is more of a factor in those samples than we're seeing in the earlier samples. I'm talking to producers throughout the southwest here. So far we're looking at probably a number 2 grade. There hasn't been many guys talking about a number 1 grade, but the rains have caused some bleaching on some of the early stuff, and some of the later stuff, again, the fusarium is probably going to bring it down into a number 2 grade, but not a lot of number 1 if there is some. Regarding desiccation of the spring wheat, we've had a few issues regarding a few questions from producers, I guess, regarding the control, or actually the value, I guess, of spraying this year. There wasn't a lot of weeds in some of the crops, and when guys went out to desiccate, they were expecting to get pretty good control. But what I've been finding lately with some of the guys is wherever the crop had lodged, and we had some of that in quite a few areas, they got very poor control of anything there, and now they're trying to harvest those crops. And what we're finding is a lot of green seed still in those crops, and we're also finding a lot of weeds in those areas. And it makes sense when you talk to them. If it's been lodged and you go and spray over top of it, basically you're only hitting the plants that are on top, and anything that's underneath isn't getting any of the chemicals. So we're definitely going to see those ones last longer, stay green longer. So it's definitely delaying harvest for those guys. Got a couple calls this past week regarding purpling of canola. And we see this pretty much every year. It's something that I guess is usually common when we get into the months of July and beginning of August. And this field was swathed already, and I got the call from the guy when he was actually swathing. He didn't realize how bad it was in some areas, And it's really not bad. It's just what it is. What's happening here is it's called sun scald in canola. And basically, when we get the heat in July, a lot of times when you get that prolonged heat or strong sunlight, because of stress, you get a red or purple color happening to the plants, and basically because of the sunlight, they're not able to or they're not able to manufacture enough chlorophyll to keep the pods green, so they start to turn a purple color. It hasn't really been a yield loss. Some varieties are more susceptible than others. One of the things I have noticed in some of the fields, and that's probably why you get some of the calls, is when you open up some of those pods, when you open them up, some of the seeds are actually shriveled up and kind of a peppery type color. Now, that's not isolated to just the pods that are purple. In this swath here, when we were opening up some of the green ones, we were seeing the same thing. Now, I wouldn't say the reason for the shriveling of the seed and the pods is caused by the sun scald. That's probably just caused by the hot conditions we had over that time period, and we're going to see that in some of the pods. When you open them up, there's going to be smaller seed. There's going to be seed that's a redder type color, a pepperier type color, and lighter. So we're going to have some issues with that when we're going to be combining the canola. The other thing that we could see, and we haven't had a lot of canola harvested in the southwest here yet, but one of the things we can see when you get some type of stress on a plant, sometimes it likes to get some green in the seed, and it locks the green in, and then we get high green counts. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue, but there has been some stresses that may cause that. So again, it'll be something we'll need to watch when we're harvesting, making sure that our green seed count isn't overly high. Another thing I wanted to talk about today is the whole thing regarding alfalfa, and been getting quite a few calls on alfalfa, and guys are starting to go out and take a second, and in some cases a third cut. This field here was a second cut coming off, and just started it the other day here, and you can see in the background where the plants are actually flowering. Purplish color, nice purple color across the whole field. Yield was going to be probably average for a second cut. I guess the big issue that concerns me with this field is the fact that we are getting to the end of August, and once you start cutting at the end of August, you do run the risk of having those plants not have the time to regrow and reestablish root reserves for the following, for the winter. And I think that's something we need to be discussing with producers, or if you're looking at taking a cut, you need to be considering, because it's kind of a risk-reward thing. The reward is there's potential for income because the demand for second cut alfalfa is going to be there. There's a lot of areas that are reporting a feed shortage. There's areas that are definitely requiring a feed, so those bales would be marketable fairly easily. So, you could definitely get some decent money for those bales. But the risk is that, when you're cutting in late August, you run the risk of those plants not having the opportunity to replenish the root reserves before a killing fall frost. And last year was probably one of the things that kind of showed up where we seen this happening. We had producers that, and in some cases it wasn't even the second cut, it was the first cut, but because of the wet conditions last year, some producers were taking kind of their first cut in the end of July, beginning of August. And what happened after that is it got hot and dry, and those alfalfa plants never really did amount much later on in the fall, and they didn't get the ability to replenish the root system, and we lost a lot of those stands this spring. Now, the same thing can happen by going in and taking a second cut in late August, and then let's say, the second week of September here we get a killing frost. Well, that plant is not going to have enough time to replenish its root reserves, and because of that, we could see, those plants going into winter in a high risk kind of situation, because if we don't get good snow cover, we get a cold winter, we could definitely see some of those plants suffering from winter kills. So I think the best option for producers right now would be to wait for that killing frost, and then once we get the killing frost, go in and cut as fast as you can, and get it off that way. This way you get the benefit of getting the second cut and being able to market the feed, but you also don't have that plant trying to regrow anymore, because usually after a killing frost, that plant will shut down for the winter already, or for the season, and then you know that it's not going to reuse up its root reserves to try growing again. So if you wait till after that killing frost, then go in, cut as soon as possible, because after the killing frost, the plants will start to dry up fast, and then when you go in and cut, you'll be losing a lot of leaf material, and then cut it that way. So I guess that would be my recommendation now. Once we get into the mid-late August time period, that's where we're playing with weeks before we can get a killing frost. So I guess that's one thing to be watching for. I guess the other thing that to be watching for is did talk to a few producers, and not very often we get 2 full moons in the month of August, and we are getting 2 full moons in this month. So they're concerned that we might get some cool conditions. So let's hope they're wrong, because it'd be nice to get all of September without a frost, but we'll have to wait and see. The next slide I wanted to put up today is the slide that shows the seeded acres for this year, and it was, I guess, a little bit surprising to me when I went through some of the numbers here, because we've seen some huge increases in some crops, and then some definite decreases in other crops, and you could kind of see from this as to how our area has been changing for new crops, for new producers looking at growing different crops in the area, and I can see this changing even more next year. But you do get the 2 that are our normal highs, which are our red spring wheat and our canola, which is canola is usually going to be the leader on that. Our winter wheat acres, they were right around the 600, and when I look at that, and then I look at the potential for this year with harvest being a little bit earlier, when you look at the yields we got on some of the winter wheats crops we had this past year, I could see the potential for that number even going higher for next year, just because of the fact that we have the ability to get the crop in this year, and the market has been pretty good and the yields were good, so I can see that number going up. The ones that might suffer because of that are barley and oats. Barley is becoming a harder and harder crop to get malt on. We're having some huge issues with barley this year in the Southwest. Yields are down. Producers are talking anywhere from 45 to 70 bushels sort of range. Our quality is going to be borderline. The heat definitely had an effect on barley. We're looking at a lot of 45 to 47 pound barley. So the malting thing for barley is going to be really tough for us this year. And I guess because of that, I could see maybe some of those acres falling next year, and producers looking more into the winter wheats and the spring wheats. One of the other ones that might come down to is oats, and again, oats is going to be a tough one for us this year. There hasn't been a whole bunch combined in the area, but from what we're seeing right now, we're seeing lighter weight oats, and I think that's one of the things that producers are going to be concerned about. The other thing is just the sheer amount of product you got to be moving around if you get the good yield out of oats. It just takes a lot of storage, and so producers might be looking for something that might be just a little bit easier to handle. When you look at the corn, and grain corn, I guess, is the one that's probably the one that's expanding in the southwest here, and I think as the year goes on, this crop looks unreal. We've got huge stands of corn out there right now. If it keeps growing the way it is, and if the crops develop the way they are developing, I can see those acres increasing next year, just because of the fact more and more producers are becoming more interested in growing the crop. I did get a couple calls this past week on corn. I got a call from the Boys of Ain area where a producer was finding some, it's like a black bug, I think a black bug or a cinch bug, I think is what it's called, and he was saying that there was levels high enough that it was actually damaging the corn cob. I've been doing some checking in on that one to see exactly what could or could have been done on it. And again, it's just something that I'm not 100% sure on yet. I'm just waiting for a few guys to get back to me, and we'll maybe go down and take a look at it. Fall rye. Well, fall rye is we're enjoying a good year for fall rye. It's a crop that I can see maybe getting a little bit bigger, but not a whole bunch. It's just limited to the amount of producers that want to grow it. It can be a good crop to grow, but I can see where we can run into some problems with erg that we have in the past, and it's just the whole fact of harvesting it. The straw is so wiry and tough, it's just a harder crop to combine, and I can see producers probably, if they have a decision to grow fall rye or winter wheat, are probably going to go to winter wheat. Fall rye is a really good crop for some of the lighter soils in the area here, and just a crop that I guess there's not a big market for it too, so a lot of guys are kind of watching that. Canola, well, canola is going to be one of the ones that's going to, I think, continue to be at that level or higher, just because of the fact of the marketability and our ability to grow it. We're becoming really good canola growers. We've been good canola growers for years here. I think producers are going to be more are going to be watching the varieties they pick a lot closer now, just because this past year here we've had some issues with some varieties, whether it be disease, height, standability, all those kind of things, and I think it's affecting yields and for some producers as well. I think the Aster's yellow is definitely going to be a thing that producers are going to look at, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, the canola thing I think is going to keep going. Flax, that's going to be a tough one. It's having another rough year this year. The yields are going to be lower than expected, and because of disease, because it was a little bit wet off the start, and it doesn't like wet feet in the spring, and then it got hot and dry, and it just never amounted to a whole bunch. So I can see where those acres might be affected or go down for the following years. Sunflowers, again, sunflowers are one of those crops that I think are market-driven in this area, and we can grow them pretty well. I think that we don't have problems growing them. The crops that are here this year look great, and so I think it's just the price on that one. Soybeans are going to be a big one. They're going to compete with canola acres and the whole oats and barley acres. I think a lot of producers are really watching those crops. The crops look really good here right in the southwest this year, and I think the producers like the fact about no fertilizing and plant the seed and plant inoculate the seed, and then there's good weed control management with being Roundup tolerant ones. So field peas, I think field peas might suffer. Again, yields are average this year, but I think we're having some difficulty with some guys harvesting some of them. They went down really bad this year, so some producers are having some longer time periods for harvesting them, and some guys are actually gone out and swathed and are letting them combining behind just because the swathers seem to be able to pick it up better. You know, again, it's a crop that's going to be around, but I don't see the acres changing all much unless, again, price goes up. And dry beans, I think dry beans aren't going to change a lot. Soybeans will be the ones that increase the most in this area over the next year. So I can see our crops being wheat and winter wheat, corn, canola, soybeans. Those will be the big ones for the coming year if things keep going the way they go and producers keep things the way producers are looking at it anyways. Talking about winter wheat and the acres and things, I guess it's time to consider if you are growing winter wheat, and I figured I'd throw in a few slides today regarding winter wheat and just kind of a preliminary as to, you know, producers are riding the combines now and starting to think about, you know, it's early enough. We are able to get some of this canola off within the next couple of weeks. It's definitely going to be nice timing to get some of the winter wheat in. So I think the first thing you need to do is to pick a variety, and just a couple of pointers on some of the varieties. As of August 1st, the Canadian Grain Commission plans to move a few of the varieties into the general Western General Purpose class instead of the Canada Western Winter Red class. So if you've been growing Kestrel, Clare, Harrier, Raptor, those ones will be moving into the general purpose, or I guess more likely the feed type class. And the biggest change for the following year is that Falcon is going to be moved into that class as well. So Falcon right now represents about 73% of the acres. Most of those growing in the Red River Valley. Out here we're growing a few of the different ones, so I think if you're thinking of a variety, it probably would be just good to make sure you're growing one that you know that you have a target market for. If you're looking for strictly feed, then it's not a big issue, but if you're looking for ones that can still stay in the Western Red Winter category, you need to make sure that you're picking the right variety. So the other thing to do regarding varieties is to decide on a variety that you're going to want for harvestability. We had a few varieties this past year, and I'll use ptarmigan as an example. It grew really tall, it lodged. Yields were better than the other winter wheats on it, but the harvesting of it was a little bit more difficult. Some producers were having to swath and combine instead of just being able to strike cut it, and so again, just something to consider when you're looking for a variety, and kind of pick one that's going to be more suited for what you're willing to do, and then also one that is going to be you know, for your market or what you're thinking of marketing. The other thing to consider when you're going to be growing winter wheat is field selection is important, and first of all, I guess control the hard-to-kill weeds this fall. So if you've got some winter annuals that you know that are going to be an issue, this fall would be the time to get at them. Canada thistle, cleavers, any of those type of weeds, make sure you get a good jump on them, because the more work you can do this fall, you know, glyphosate is fairly reasonably priced, and if they can get control of that, it's a lot easier controlling them this fall than next spring having to look at controlling them in crop. And when you have the winter annuals, they'll be going just as early as the winter wheat will be going. So when you're going to be seeding, you'll be needing to go out and be spraying your winter wheat to get those weeds. Otherwise, by the time you get done putting your crop in, winter wheat is going to be, those weeds in the winter wheat are going to be too big and too hard to control. Look for rotation. You know, one of the things that we've always, when we go off a year where we've had a good winter wheat crop and we get a lot of guys wanting to grow winter wheat, and a lot of times they forget a bit about their past rotations, and then we run into issues like weed streak mosaic in the following years. And you know, if you've got volunteer cereals in your canola crop, or if you have volunteer cereals in your peas, or if you have volunteer cereals in your sunflowers, make sure you control those volunteer cereals this fall. Otherwise, we'll have the potential for disease issues in the spring, because we need at least 7 to 14 days, probably closer to 14 days, without the mites having being able to live off green material in that field. Otherwise, they'll just jump over onto the winter wheat and live over on the winter wheat during the winter time. So definitely watch out for the volunteer cereals when you're out there harvesting, and if you've got an issue there, make sure you control them this fall and get them cleaned up before you're planting your winter wheat. Plan your fertility program. That's been always an issue. It seems. Whether it's this spring, where a lot of guys put most of their, or before I get into that, I guess a lot of producers have been looking at putting all their fertilizer on in the fall, and it seems to be working, but we did run into some issues this year where we had some really lush winter wheat crops, and they were showing you know, a lacking of some nutrients, and guys have to go back in and top dress. So I guess make sure, if you're planning to put everything on in the fall, that you're putting enough on that you're going to you know, have enough for the crop for the whole growing season. Not a bad way of looking at it is putting on the majority this fall and then just going back in the spring and top dressing a little bit. Seems to just cover up some of the mistakes, or some of the areas where, you know, maybe some of that fertilizer isn't quite in reach for those root systems to get at it. It seems to just help that crop get going a little bit faster. And I know we ran into a couple fields this past spring where producers had to go back in and top dress because we were seeing yellowing in the field and just you know, nutrient deficiency in some of those crops. Okay, with that, I think I pretty much covered the crop update I wanted to talk about a bit today, and now I'm going to maybe just get into a little bit about the whole Aster's yellow situation that's happened this past year. And I guess just to start off with, the situation we had this year was the leafhoppers that carry the virus came up fairly early this year, and they're blowing up with the southerly winds from the States. And because of that, we had a lot of leafhoppers, and because of that, they were in several crops. In the past, we normally see the Aster's yellow in canola, and the picture on the screen here kind of shows what we normally been seeing. We've been seeing fields of canola that are just, you know, they stand above the rest, and they're basically really visible. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I guess we had a very large amount, I guess I would say, but they were in that 5 to 10% range. And I'm thinking this year we might be higher than that, or probably in some fields I've definitely noticed them higher than that. But the thing with this year, we're also noticing them in a lot of the other crops that we didn't notice it about 5 years ago. We're seeing it in flax this year. I've seen it in quite a few fields of flax, and it has caused a fair bit of damage. Caused a lot of the bolls to not develop at all, and basically when you look at the canola and you see where it doesn't allow the pods to develop, well, in the flax it's not letting the bolls develop either, and we're seeing a lot of those situations in flax fields. Something that's been happening lately, or we've been noticing too, is I'm hearing reports of, is Aster's yellow in some of our cereal crops, which is something that we I guess probably have been happening in the past, but the level hasn't been very high, so we never really noticed or were concerned about it. But some of the reports or some of the, when sending samples away, some of the results coming back are saying that there's Aster's yellow showing up in barley and wheat fields as well, and getting reports from some of the other independent agronomists as well, where they've been sending samples away and they've been coming back the same. So we're definitely seeing some situations, and this field here is a field of barley that was sown fairly late, and one of the things that Aster's yellow will do with the cereal crop is it'll almost stop it from trying to go to head. And you can see in this field where the odd head has been shooting up, but you see most of it is staying in the vegetative type stage, where we're seeing a lot of leaf material, but we're not seeing a whole bunch of heads across the field. And when you look a little bit closer, you can see yellowing of the leaves, and you can see that there are symptoms very similar to barley yellow dwarf, and so it can be confused with barley yellow dwarf. There are some differences, but really to be able to identify for sure, it's probably best to send some samples away to the lab so they can test for it and see exactly what you're dealing with. But either case, we are definitely seeing more of it this year than we have in past years. Some of the reports that I've been getting from some of the independents is they're seeing white heads. So I guess if I go back to the beginning here and show you the picture of the wheat that I started the presentation off. Some of the white heads like this, they've been sending some of those away as well. And this sample that I sent away came back as root rot. So that's why the picture I have here shows root rot. So but they're seeing white heads with nothing in them and sending it away, and they're getting reports back that it's Aster's yellow as well. So again, a disease, it can be confused, I guess, with some other things that's happening. But we're getting, I guess, a few of those happening in the Southwest, where we're seeing some of them coming back as Aster's yellow. So we're seeing it in barley, and we're seeing it in wheat as well. So it has been affecting our yields. And I think for this coming year, I think one of the things we've got to remember first is it doesn't happen every year. And I think this year was one of those years where we're going to see it, be fairly severe, and we're probably, a lot of guys are thinking, I should be spraying, but the problem with spraying is the leaf hoppers, the timing is the big issue, because you don't know when they're going to blow up. And then the other thing is if you're spraying and your neighbor isn't spraying, they're probably fairly mobile enough still that they can move around from field to field. So it's not something where you're going to, you need to be spraying quite a few acres. That's what the leaf hopper looks like, and we had John Gavloski on this year, earlier on in the season, and he did mention that they were fairly noticeable this year. When you walked in a lot of fields, you could definitely see all these little things jumping around or hopping around in front of you. The big thing is there's 6 spots on its head that kind of show that 6 black spots that really identify them. But again, there was enough of them around the spring; they were easy to find. So what they do is they feed off the juices of the plant, and but when they blow up here, they're carrying a virus with them. And when they feed off the juices of the plant, they leave the virus behind in the plant, and that's how they infect the plant. So again, something that we've had, usually have some every year. Next year it could be very minimal, and we wouldn't have to worry about it all. So I don't think we need to, really be watching our crop rotations and changing our whole seeding plan because we're scared we might get it again. I think it's just it was a year that they were here, and hopefully next year they won't be as severe. just a couple comments that it usually has, it can be a wheat disease, but it usually is the most impact on canola, and I mentioned that, and we've seen that in the canola fields. There really isn't a spray solution, and I mentioned that there was some guys that were talking about spraying and they were going to try it, and but again, you know, the timing is critical, and you got to make sure they're there. In wheat fields, you need to look for white heads with little or no seed. I guess one of the things in the fields is the flag leaf can be curled, and you know, but again, it's difficult to, in my opinion, it's difficult to diagnose in cereal crops. So if you're seeing something that's these kind of symptoms, it's probably best to get it sent away just to determine for sure what you're dealing with. I guess with that, I've covered most of the things I want to cover for today. Linda, is there any questions?
Not at this time, Lionel.
Okay. One thing I wanted to, before I end it off today, I wanted to throw this site that's out there right now. It's called Crop Chatter, and it's been developed by the Knowledge Center in Carmen, I'm pretty sure. But anyways, it's a new site that you can go on and you can ask questions, you can upload pictures onto it, and you can get advice, and it's kind of like a talk site or a chat site where different people can give their opinion as to what they think might be going on. So if you've got some spare time, go and take a look at that site. I found it pretty interesting. I've been on it a couple times, and there's just it's kind of like a current event of what's going on in the field. So it's a pretty good site. I guess with that, if you got any questions, there's mine and Linda's contact information for the Ceresco office, and then there's the FPAs for the Southwest and South Parkland. So if you've got questions, I'm sure they'd be able to help you as well.
Lionel, I do have a question here. Just hang on a second. I have to get it. Sorry. It says here, I thought that aster yellows can overwinter in perennial crops as well as weeds. So should we be more concerned for next year?
Aster's yellow is a virus that's carried by the leafhopper. So it's really not a disease that can overwinter the leafhoppers. What you have to be concerned about that might overwinter, and there was some talk this past year that the leafhopper, because of our warm, mild winter, that there was some talk that the leafhopper might have overwintered up here, and if that's the case, that could be one reason why we're seeing more damage than normal. I guess it's going to really depend on the winter. If we get a winter where there is a warm winter, if there's enough snow cover to insulate the ground and it's able to survive the winter, then yes, we could see the issue starting early again next spring because they're here already. Normally, they have to be blown up from the States, and in the past that was usually the reason, or the only way it would happen. But again, you know, with a warmer winter, we might see some of them again. If we get a cooler, colder winter, the likelihood of them surviving is low. So I'm thinking we would still need to see everything be blown up from the States.
Great, thanks, Lionel.
Okay, well, with that, I'd like to end the webinar for today, and we'll see everybody next week.